Good morning and welcome to the next session of So You Want to Start a Beauty Brand. I just want to thank Jen for inviting me to be a part of this conference. I think this is an excellent resource and I hope that you can take home something valuable today. So, in this session, we're going to talk just a little bit at a very high level about what you need to know as a beauty brand working with a contract manufacturer. So, first and foremost, it's probably important for you to understand why in the world I am sharing this information with you. My name is Erica Douglas. I am the CEO and founder of MC Group. I'm also probably better known on socials as Sister Scientist, and I am a cosmetic chemist who has worked on the brand side and now on the contract manufacturing side for 15 plus years in the beauty business. Um, MC Group was founded in 2014, and we've been in business working with budding beauty brands from all over the world. And essentially, the ethos of MC Group has been to take the knowledge and the skill set that me and my team learned working with brands in corporate and applying that for startup brands mostly. And so our mission has been to provide strategic growth solutions for aspiring entrepreneurs and established businesses in the beauty space. And so my team is compiled of not only chemists and operations and supply chain gurus, but also marketing and business development experts who have also worked on the brand side. And we combine all of that experience under one umbrella at MC Group. And so our primary business is small batch and scale contract manufacturing. We also offer research and product development, regulatory services, marketing and branding strategy, and also some business development services. So I hope that if you are in the market for working with a contract manufacturer, that you consider us. And I hope that what I share with you today will be helpful with whoever you may work with in the future. And so you are getting a behind the scenes look on kind of how we engage with clients and what you need to know in order to be successful at really building a relationship with a contract manufacturer. So here's a high level view of what we're going to cover today. First, we're going to cover what you need to do to assess your brand needs and goals. That should be the very first thing you understand before even contracting or looking for a contract manufacturer. This is a very important step one. We'll also talk about collaborating on the formulation process and then what scale up and production actually looks like and what you need to know, and also understanding the cost to do business. So many times people don't understand this basic concept. And I want to go over some things at a very high level there. And then who's responsible for what? Your manufacturer versus you as the brand. From a legal perspective, the government looks at things differently as far as who's responsible for what. So we'll go through that. And then just a brief stint on communication and contracts. So important. And then there should be some time for Q&A at the end. So let's jump into it. When you are assessing your brand's needs and goals, there are a few important things that I would say you need to understand. First, what is your current and future product range? So in today's world, your brand may have, let's just say 4 products: a shampoo, a conditioner, and maybe 2 styling products. But when you are deciding on what type of contract manufacturer you want to work with, it's important that you understand what your goals are to expand that product range, because there are manufacturers that may only do skincare or only hair care or only have the capabilities to produce creams and liquids. Maybe you want to do a shampoo bar. That particular type of service may not be offered at all contract manufacturers. Aerosols, sachet packets, tubes, things of that nature. When it comes to deciding what type of packaging your product is in, also very important questions to ask a contract manufacturer. You have to understand that one contract manufacturer may not fit all of your needs, but understanding what their capabilities are will help you to understand how far they can scale with you and what type of flexibilities you have when growing your brand. Also, it's important to know that certain products do fall under, at least in the U.S., fall under the FDA or fall under the FDA as fall under FDA regulated products such as acne, dandruff. Those are required to be manufactured in an FDA or registered plant, and that is very different than some of the other contract manufacturers where the FDA is not at this particular time does not have oversight on all cosmetic manufacturers in the US. So important to understand whether your contract manufacturer has certain types of certifications, what their actual equipment can fill as far as like what type of packaging they can fill, and then also which formulations they specialize in and what they can actually scale up. Also understanding what are your target consumers' needs, priorities. And here's the thing, we all want everything, but when it comes down to making key decisions in which products or what attributes you decide to keep or not keep in your products, it's important to understand what is important to your consumer. Efficacy, ingredient standard. Maybe there's some consumers who only want clean beauty type products, but then there are other consumers who don't care as much when it comes to natural or clean beauty. Do they have a specific price point? If that's the case, then you need to be walking into your pricing backwards to understand what is the maximum you can even your product can cost so that you can price your product appropriately for your consumer set. Maybe your consumer like certain types of packaging or they are buying into your brand mission. So understanding those things are important because that will trickle down into what your contract manufacturer can or can't do, and understanding those limitations will be important in how you choose your contract manufacturer. Also, it's important to understand what your current and forecasted volumes are. So at MC Group, we work with a lot of startup companies. And so we work with brands that are starting with, maybe 500 units at a time per product. There are other contract manufacturers that have much higher minimums. Sometimes they say, you have to be making at least 10,000 units. And so I think when you are ready to work with a contract manufacturer, you have growth in your mindset. The way to determine whether you are ready to work with a contract manufacturer is if your demand for your product outweighs your ability to manufacture it on your own, if you are somebody who is manufacturing or producing your own product in the beginning. So that means if you are making product in your kitchen and you can't keep up with demand, then it is time to start engaging contract manufacturer. Or if you are looking to start from scratch, but you only can produce a limited quantity in the beginning in your first runs, then it's very important to find a contract manufacturer who specializes in small batches and can price it at a point that's affordable to where you can still sell it to your customer as at a profit. So understanding your volumes is very important, because if you're coming in at 500 units or 1,000 units versus you need 10,000, 25,000 units, those may be two different types of contract manufacturers. But what's also important is finding somebody who can accommodate you where you are, but has the ability to grow and scale with you over time. And sometimes you may have to switch contract manufacturers once you get to a certain volumes in your ordering. Sometimes you can't find a contract manufacturer that does both small and large quantities in their runs. But that is for you to assess where your priorities are in your business. That is one of the unique value propositions we have at MC Group. We work with the companies who are doing 500 units at a time, and we work with companies who are putting in, 10,000, 20,000 plus purchase orders at a time. Also, you need to understand where are you selling these products, because the requirements and the needs of a retail channel versus direct to consumer or online e-commerce sales very different. And so you have to understand where you expect to sell these products. Also, regionally, there are different regulatory requirements in different areas of the world. EU has different standards compared to Canada, compared to the US. And so if you have the foresight that you may be selling in a different part of the world at some point, it's important to express that and communicate that with your contract manufacturer, because it's very hard to change these brands and the formulations to meet other countries' standards if you are doing it on the back end versus doing it on the front end. Another important question to ask yourself is, do you plan on bringing on investors or selling your company? Investors often look for intellectual property or look for who owns the intellectual property in a company. And so formula ownership becomes very important here. And this is something that is often not said up front, most contract manufacturers don't offer formula ownership specifically for smaller brands. So it's very important that you ask those questions on the front end and find a way to negotiate what that may look like. In our world, brands can own formulas after they have produced so many units with us. They also have the option to buy them out directly. And so setting those parameters of what the path to formula ownership looks like is extremely important to understand at the beginning before you start engaging with a contract manufacturer. And then how profitable do you need to be? This is extremely imperative to understand because oftentimes I will get companies that want to sell, you know, their skin care, face cream, and they say they want to be the economical brand. They want to be an affordable brand. They want their moisturizing cream to be $10 in a jar with a box embroidered and all these things. But the thing is, to make a $10 product, quality product, with all the bells and whistles, and you're only making 500, 1,000 units is practically impossible. And so it's important to understand what the cost is to the brand, what it's going to cost you to make or to buy a finished product from a contract manufacturer, and then put your markup on it to make sure that you are earning profit when you sell to a customer. And so that means your products have to be priced appropriately and based off of the cost of goods of your formula or your product. And if it's too expensive and price point is very important in your company or in your brand, then you may have to, make some concessions in order to ensure that the cost makes sense for the price point. And so you have to work backwards into that. So make sure that you understand your financials when engaging with a contract manufacturer, so you know what your target price should be. Now, going into the formulation process. Brands come in at different places with their formulations. Sometimes we have brands that have existing formulas that they're bringing from other contract manufacturers or maybe something they've been making in their kitchen. And then we have other brands that are starting from scratch. Either way, it is very important that you have a detailed product brief for your contract manufacturer to understand what your expectations are of every product, even if it is an existing product. We want to know where it's positioned, what the functionality is, the physical attributes. Is it red? Is it creamy? Is it transparent? The color, all the things. What restrictions are there? Maybe you don't want to use parabens in your formula. That should all be written out on this product brief. And the more detailed you are and the more clear you are about what you can allow in this product and what this product needs to do, the better experience you will have with getting to the finish line and finalizing your formula when working with a contract manufacturer. And understanding your priorities of what your non-negotiables are versus where you can make some concessions to get to a finished product. Also, it's important to understand what types of formulations your contract manufacturer offers. Stock or private label formulas tend to be formulations that the contract manufacturer owns, and they're just putting your label on it, and they may allow you to add your own fragrance or key ingredients, versus custom formulations are made from scratch and are formulated to the specific needs of a brand. In most cases, we see that our brands have a combination of stock and custom formulas. Stock formulas are usually cheaper to bring to market, versus custom formulation requires additional testing, time, and iterations to make sure that you're getting the product that you want. And so also understanding the formulation standards that they have. What are the clean beauty standards? And there's no real government agency that regulates this. So what is your brand's definition of what clean means? And making sure that your contract manufacturer is clear on what is allowed to be used in your product and what is not. Ingredient sourcing. Are they using organic materials, natural materials, ethically sourced? And then of course, formula ownership, which we discussed a little bit earlier in the conversation. So these are all types of things that you should be discussing before you start the formulation process. Now, when you receive your samples, you want to evaluate each formula meticulously. Everything from the color, the smell, what it looks like when you left it sitting in the bathroom for 10 days, and of course the efficacy. Did it work? Did it do what you needed it to do on your hair, your skin, or your body? Because your feedback is extremely important to how the contract manufacturer makes additional changes to that formula. And so the process is we give you a sample, you evaluate it, you provide feedback, we use your feedback to make changes, and then you get additional samples. And that process repeats itself over and over until we get to a formula that we can finalize and approve based off of the brand's approval of that formulation. Now, what's also important is to make sure that your CM has can verify the formula um, and the quality testing protocols. This means that once you have a formula that is final and that you want to move into production, that the standards are written and documented to every last detail, and there are parameters set to where we are approving that this formula can be within a certain pH, a certain viscosity, kind of the allotment of how light or dark the color can be. All of those standards are documented and approved by the brand. And then there are, of course, quality testing protocols such as stability testing, challenge testing, and in some cases, you may need additional tests such as HRIPT, which is allergen testing, toxicology, and then you always want to have claim substantiation. Now, this is a little murky because it's the brand's responsibility to ensure that the claims are substantiated, and some contract manufacturers help with this process more than others. So this is also a good question to ask your manufacturer. What is the extent of how they can provide data and information to help you with your claim substantiation? And how they assist in that process. And so once the formula has passed the quality protocols, and you have verified that this is indeed the final formula that you want to bring to market, you're signing off on the standards, and that is what moves forward into production. And once that is signed off on, there's no going back, right? If you go back, there are usually additional fees to change things, but you're basically locked in at that point. So as we move into preparing for scale up and production, there are a few things that you will need to look at. You're going to be in a place where you need to choose your packaging. In most cases, the CM will provide stock or custom packaging options, and they have to test the compatibility of that formula in your packaging, which can add additional. It should be part of the standard stability testing, which often takes anywhere from can be up to 18 weeks in some cases. So you want to make sure you're allotting time for stability testing of your formula before it's actually going into production. So that's important to keep in mind when working through your timelines. Also, if you're a small brand, I don't think it's best to invest in custom packaging until you have the volumes to justify the cost of custom packaging. It often comes from overseas. It's often more expensive, and also causes some logistical issues. So if you're a budding brand starting from the beginning, it's much easier, better for you to stay in stock options until your brand is at a point where it can afford custom options. Also, this is where you will design your label, which is often this fun part, right? Branding, marketing. How do you want your brand to be visible to the world? Your contract manufacturer will provide you with the weight, the net weight of the product, the ingredient panel, the warning, suggested claims, but everything else the brand has to come up with on the copy. So be prepared to hire a label designer who can help you with this process, or a copywriter who can help you with branding a product, or you can do it yourself. But your contract manufacturer only provides you with kind of the scientific data needed to go on the label. And then there will be a quotation. So now that you have a final formula, you have packaging, you have labels, all of these things get priced from a contract manufacturer to determine what will their price be to you. So that could be, pricing is based off of volumes, the quality of the ingredients, the formulation itself can range in price. And so all those things get added up. And so this is where I kind of referred to earlier, where you need to be very cost conscious of what you should be pricing your product at when you um, when you understand what the cost of goods is to you. Very, very important. And it's important to communicate that with your contract manufacturer so they can kind of pull you back or say, hey, the cost is getting out of control based off of where you need to be. And they can pull you back if you are making decisions that are too costly. And then once you have a quote and it's agreed upon, the product is scheduled for production. And that's where, everything gets locked in. The contract manufacturer starts ordering components, materials to make your product. In some cases, brands will provide their own packaging or provide certain components, but all of these things get put into a ERP system so that it can be tracked in the warehouse. Logistics can be monitored, and then the actual formula is scaled. In many cases, you might do a pilot batch if you're a smaller brand, not as likely, but for bigger runs, there would be pilot batching to ensure that there are no issues when scaling up from the lab to the manufacturing floor. Um, and and then from there, once the product is ready, we are calling the brands to say, hey, your order is ready to be shipped. And that's when the truck comes to pick it up. And so you as a brand should be planning for the freight and storage of your own products, because most contract manufacturers are not storing their products there. If you're doing e-commerce, you will want to store your products or keep your products at maybe a pick, pack, and ship facility that can ship Amazon orders or ship direct to consumer. And then if you're selling in retailers, they will have very specific instructions on how and when the products can ship to their warehouses. So you need to be aware that that cost is not factored into the cost that you or the price that you are paying your contract manufacturer, and you should plan accordingly. And then most importantly, figure out your reorder point. The time to order more products is not when you have a week's worth of inventory. So you want to understand with your CM, how long will it take you to make more product for me? And then if you ordered 1,000 units on the first run, maybe you anticipate ordering 2,000 units on the second run, or 5,000 units. What is the time it will take your contract manufacturer to make that once you place an order? And you should work the math backwards to where you should be reordering when at the point where you have the lead time in weeks plus 3 additional weeks. So if your contract manufacturer says it's going to take them 5 weeks to produce another run, then you should be calling them when you have 8 weeks of inventory, ideally. And so it's very hard as a budding brand to know your forecast, but if you monitor your sales accordingly over a long period of time as you're growing, you'll understand better kind of how to navigate that. Now, understanding the costs associated. So when you are paying a contract manufacturer for a finished product, there are all of these things that go into that price: the raw materials, the labor, the overhead, and all these kind of indirect costs that maybe you don't see. And so that all goes into how a contract manufacturer prices what they prices out the products that you're purchasing from them. This is your wholesale price because that is the cost of goods to you. Additional costs that you should be considering and incorporating in pricing your products accordingly is that you have marketing expense, you have overhead expense, you as the founder or the owner needs to be paid. How much is your retailer's margin? How much is it costing you for freight? So make sure you are calculating all of those costs together when pricing out your products, right? And so understanding your COGS, which stands for cost of goods sold, and like your direct cost, which is what you're paying your contract manufacturer, versus your indirect cost, which may be kind of all these other additional costs, need to be considered when pricing your brand. And so your suggested retail price should always be your COGS times 1 plus whatever your markup is. And your markup may be, hey, I want to make 100% margin, I don't know, 100% profit on this. And so you would basically be pricing your brand accordingly to ensure that you're getting at least 100% of the cost back when you sell these products to your consumer. Another thing is when you are scaling with a contract manufacturer, it can be very costly. So start looking for additional financing options. Do not, or try not to, pay for your production runs out of your cash reserves. You should be looking for credit. You should be looking for factoring, things that can help you to float cash flow or protect cash flow and float your how you spend your money in a way that makes sense with how cash is coming into the business. So that's more of a business kind of scenario, but definitely you should look into that. Now, the last thing I would say is very important for you to understand is who's responsible for what. The contract manufacturer is responsible to the brand, but the brand is responsible to the consumer or the government, right? And so we, as a contract manufacturer, are ensuring that our facility is up to code and meets certain requirements with the government. We're supplying you with finished product that is safe. We're verifying that what's in the product is actually in the product, it is safe, and we're providing the brand with the necessary data they need to complete their paperwork and the things that they need to do on their side. But when your brand is on the shelf, most people don't know who your contract manufacturer is. So when there's a problem or you're not in compliance, they're coming after the brand. And so that's why it's very important for you as a brand owner to really understand what's going on your label, what's in the product, and that you have a good working relationship with your contract manufacturer to make sure that all of those things are in compliance, because they're coming after you if anything's wrong, not your contract manufacturer. So it's important for you to do your own due diligence so that you know exactly what is required of you and what is required of the products that you're putting on the market, so that you can make sure that you are covered. Because in many cases, you can go back to your contract manufacturer and say, "Hey, I got in trouble for XYZ." But if it's something that the contract manufacturer didn't know you needed or didn't know you were doing, the buck still stops with you as a brand. And so it's very important to have a good, open relationship and understanding kind of what you need as a brand and how your contract manufacturer can support you in those efforts, because at the end of the day, it's still your brand and it's your liability and what you put on the market. And that comes down to kind of my final point, which is communication is key. You want to work with somebody who you can establish clear communication channels with, and you have a good working relationship with. If it doesn't feel good in your gut, I would say look for somebody else, because when things go wrong, you want somebody who's going to work with you and not against you, and is going to kind of check all the boxes, cross all the T's, dot all the I's, and be transparent with you, right? And so it's important, just like a marriage, just like any other relationship, this is a partnership, and you want to have a good relationship based off of trust and transparency and good communication. But as in any business, you need to make sure that everything is in the contract, right? So everything you agree upon, all how you are kind of your operating agreement, your working relationship should all be documented. And contract manufacturers will be able to provide you with those agreements, but do not be afraid to review or have your attorney review those documents and to push back on certain things that don't make sense for your brand, right? Open mouths or closed mouths don't get fed. You have to ask the questions and negotiate in your best interest. But if it's not in writing, then it can never be proven. So make sure that everything, even with a good working relationship, is in writing. And so that brings us to the end of this conversation. I hope that you have learned some very key things in how you can form a good choose a great contract manufacturer for your brand and form a good relationship. And I hope that I can continue to be a resource for you in the future. So let's keep the conversation going. You can find me or MC Group on all the socials, and you can also visit us directly on our websites for additional questions. Thank you so much, and I hope that you have gained something very valuable in how you scale your business.